Our nation is facing an issue of epic proportion and of critical importance. It is an issue that affects our economy, reduces the competitiveness of our workforce, and challenges our highest ideals. The issue is America's early childhood literacy crisis. I chose to do a digital story on the problem of literacy because I had a personal experience with it in one of my classes here at the University of Minnesota. In my class, we were doing PowerPoint presentations, and one of my classmates was giving his presentation, and he had obviously copied and pasted something because as he was reading his presentation to the class off the PowerPoint, he came across the word interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. And the student didn't have the literacy skills to look at that word and automatically know what it said. He had to sit there in front of this class of University of Minnesota students and literally sound out the word in front of all of us because he couldn't read it. And it was really sad and shocking to see.
My motivation for doing this project actually happened on the very first day of my community service experience at the Brian Coyle Community Center. My job mostly is to help new clients when they first come in to fill out a TFAP form, which just makes sure that they qualify for receiving food shelf assistance. And I'm helping this first woman come in. There's the huge language barrier. I don't speak Somali and she didn't speak any English, but she understood that I wanted her to sign her name once she had filled out the form, and she drew a star. And there were no letters or any semblance of letters, and it was just a star. And I thought, she can't read, she doesn't know how to spell her own name. And that really motivated me to look more into literacy, especially with adults, since I work with adults.
Did you know that without the necessary pre-K literacy resources, children can start down the slippery slope to non-achievement before they even have a chance to compete? About 10 million children have difficulties learning to read. Of those children, 10 to 15% eventually drop out of high school, and only 2% complete a 4-year college program. Nearly 1 billion people in the 21st century are unable to read a book or sign their names. 2/3 of these are women. 2/3 of students who cannot read proficiently by the end of the 4th grade will end up in jail or on welfare. The Department of Justice states the link between academic failure and delinquency, violence, and crime is welded to reading failure. Over 70% of inmates in America's prisons cannot read above a 4th grade level. %61% of low-income families have no age-appropriate books at all in their homes for their children. With all of these books, perhaps the most amazing fact of all is that 1 in 4 American children grow up without knowing how to read.
Literacy is integral because after the 3rd grade, the main way that you access information is through reading. So if a kid is unable to read at grade 3, they're then going to start falling behind in all their other subjects. So it's really these really basic phonetic skills that are the foundation for all future learning.
Like, reading is critical to every single thing you do. Mm-hmm. And so like it's about learning, and then I think even as you progress, as you get older and older, it's even about like advocating for yourself. So can you function in society? Can you get can you get for yourself and your family like the resources you need? It comes back to reading. It comes back to literacy. It comes back to being able to express and advocate for yourself. But, you know, we've all tried to call like the phone company or like the utility company, or you tried to like there's so many systems or like networks or bureaucratic like institutions out there that trying to navigate just the world is much more complicated when you don't have a basic literacy skill or basic command of English.
Right, so we have a number of students who are incredibly intelligent, but because they're so far behind in reading, school is just incredibly frustrating for them, and they start to kind of internalize this identity and think of themselves as less intelligent and less capable than their peers. When they're just really bright kids, they just haven't mastered those basic literacy skills. It's near impossible to find a living wage job if you can't read or write the language.
Like even as someone who's assisting someone who's job searching, whose English levels are very low, it feels like an insurmountable hurdle to get over.
We spend a lot of time talking about labeling theory and what happens when, if you call somebody a deviant or you call somebody illiterate, they think of themselves as deviant or illiterate for the rest of their lives.
And the community is a huge part of this project because illiterate citizens in a community reflects on the nation as a whole.
It affects everything from high school dropout rates to unemployment rates, which affects the economy, just all kinds of things, and just how widespread something as seemingly innocent as literacy, how widespread it affects a community just so many different ways.
So, you know, you just break it down to focusing on fixing one community's illiteracy problem and then expanding that, and, you know, it'll just make a huge difference.
Basically, people talk about trickle-down poverty, and through working at the Brian Coyle Community Center, I've kind of discovered trickle-down illiteracy. What I found is that even in just a family, a community that localized, if one person can't read, it's likely that other members of the family can't read, particularly if those family members are the parents.
I learned that within a community, one person or a group of people can do a lot to address this issue.
And so kind of just the trickle-down effect, almost a chain reaction, domino reaction occurrence of illiteracy happens in communities, and that's really what scares me the most.
Poor literacy is extremely common in low-income communities. We need to help these low-income families provide more opportunities to their kids and give them more after-school programs that are free, where these children can get after-school services and get extra help on their reading and writing, just so they can function at a literate level the same as any other child.
And the idea that, you know, we want to talk about literacy and we want to teach kids to read, but unless we get at the root of what's really going on, which is the difference in values between low-income communities and more middle-class income communities, until we get at those roots, we won't solve the problem. The values are just different. And so unless we can communicate to those low-income families that literacy is related with money, nothing will change, just because the values are so different. And that's really what I've learned the most about.
And they should have all the same privileges as any other student. There's no reason that the income of their parents should affect their level of reading and writing, because it's not fair that a low-income family, that their children don't get to succeed on to high school or don't get to succeed into college just because of how much money the family made. You know, it shouldn't be like that. We should all have the same opportunities, and So literacy for the low-income families specifically is something that I learned needs to be addressed. This is a bigger issue than I ever realized.
It's just how narrow my perspective really is in regards to a lot of issues, not just literacy.
I now know that it's a big issue for other families and for other children, and I wasn't aware of that before. And I'm just very grateful for the opportunities that I have had.
There are literally children and adults less than 3 blocks away from my dorm who have never been able to read a single letter in their lives.
That I'm going to do whatever it takes to help the kids in my service learning community to excel in reading and writing.
And how there's things that need to be done right here before I even think about what's going on in other continents on this planet. That was probably the most eye-opening thing.
And just the idea that I can help a community through my volunteer work, that's a big thing. And I have become to appreciate the work that I can do.
I had some really interesting first-hand experience with the idea of white privilege. Being white, and it comes with a lot of privilege, and I think a lot of responsibility. Not in the idea that we can do more or should do more, but that there is that emotional conflict there.